What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Stacking the Box College Football Edition. I'm your host, Reed Wallach, joined as always by Cody Williams. Loaded show today. We got a few big games to get into. We have the first edition of the college football playoff rankings that are, I'm pretty sure, just a media-driven spectacle to get people upset and to talk about it. But guess what? They have succeeded because we're going to talk about it and talk about our rankings, who's overrated, who's underrated, and then we're going to, of course, give out some bets for the Week 10 card. Cody, what's going on, man?
Just getting up in arms about the college football playoff rankings, trying to figure out which committee members I need to write to and send complaint letters to.
Yeah, no, they have succeeded at their jobs because on October 31st, they handed out a bunch of rankings that are completely arbitrary, don't make any sense necessarily. And people got upset about them. I think we're starting to, at least like the people that follow the sport are starting to get a little bit of an understanding that this is not necessarily indicative of where the teams are going to be when the Final Four are released.
Yeah.
It's merely just like a way to generate some hype around the playoffs. So I think people are starting to become aware of that. But of course, we still get upset anyway because that's how we do it. So before we get to talking about those rankings and what we are going and your top four, my top four, maybe a little overrated, underrated. We'll see how it goes. But let me tell you about our sponsor, SuperDraft. Have you guys heard of SuperDraft Daily Fantasy Sports? SuperDraft hosts daily fantasy prop games where you can compete for a chance to win cash prizes. The game is simple. For each contest, you are given a pool of props for upcoming games. You pick whether each prop will be over or under the given total. You can choose up to 8 different props for a bigger win, just like creating a parlay. If you want to join in on the action, we've got you covered. All you have to do is sign up with the promo code FAN, F-A-N, today and receive a deposit match of up to $20. You will also receive a free pick in your first game. Think of it like a free square in a bingo card or a free leg of a parlay. Using code FAN, again, F-A-N, when signing up, not only gets you these great rewards, but it also lets you support this fine podcast. So make sure to use the promo code FAN when you sign up with SuperDraft. This offer is only available to new customers who are 18 plus, 19 plus if you're in Alabama, or 21 plus if you're in Massachusetts, and physically present in valid states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. You could check out the episode description below for the full terms of the offer. All right. College Football Playoffs Selection Committee revealed their first look at a poll. And I'm going to go through the top. We'll go top 12.
Okay.
No, top 14.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You want me to go from 1 to 14 or 14 to 1?
Let's go 14 to 1. Let's do it like ESPN. Do it like the rankings reveal.
So I think these are the only teams, the top 14, that have like any sort of possible non-zero chance to get in. Not saying they're going to or they really have much of a chance, but this is where I drew the line. LSU's 14. They obviously play Alabama this weekend. Louisville's 13. They only have one loss on the year, so conceivably they could get in. Number 12 is Missouri. They also only have one loss to LSU. They play at Georgia this weekend, so they can really throw themselves into the mix of an upset win this weekend. Number 11 is Penn State. They only lost to Ohio State. They play Michigan next week. Potential Big Ten championship game as well. So Penn State, I wouldn't rule them out. Ole Miss, number 10. They only have one loss as well. Oklahoma suffered their first loss last week at Kansas. They are now number 9. Alabama's number 8. They, like we just said, they play LSU this weekend. They only have one loss as well to number 7, Texas, who has one loss. Oregon's number 6. They have one loss to number 5, Washington. Sensing a theme here. And then our top 4, number 4, Florida State, number 3, Michigan, number 2, Georgia, and number 1, Ohio State. So let's start with, let's forget, I drew cast a big net there. Let's start with just the top 4. Cody, what is your one big takeaway from the top 4?
So my big takeaway from the top 4 is, at least at this point, the committee is valuing resume over eye test. Because if you're talking about eye test, there is no way Ohio State is the number 1 team in the country. With the way that offense has looked and struggled at times, and really outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. for the entire season, hasn't been able to get off the ground consistently. there's no way in comparison to what like the highs we've seen from Georgia and the sustained dominance we've seen from Michigan against a weaker schedule that you can say that Ohio State passes the eye test better than those two teams. But they do have the win over Notre Dame. They do have the win over Penn State. Notre Dame was on the road, and those are two, I think, top 15 teams, if I'm not mistaken. I think Notre Dame is at 15. We didn't mention them. But so that's two top 15 wins. So they're valuing that resume. At the same time, if you're valuing resume over the eye test, how is Florida State not above Georgia and Michigan? Because they have a better win than either of those two programs, either by beating LSU in the opener handily. So I feel like they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth with how the way they ordered this top four.
Yeah, I again, it's now November 1st, October 31st, the rankings came out. I'm not going to like get up in arms that Ohio State was ranked number one. I think there's like a crazy stat out there that the team that was ranked number one in the first college football playoff ranking has never actually made it or something. There's some sort of stat.
It's something close to that. Yeah.
Because I remember the first year they did it, like Mississippi State was like the first team, and I believe they lost like the very next week or something. But
yeah, it was Dak Prescott and Mississippi State, and then they lost to Alabama either the next week or the week after. But yeah they lost soon after.
I'm not going to get like, I understand, I guess, if you're going to say Ohio State has the best resume to date, like I'm not going to, I guess technically, like if you're looking at the wins on paper, that's fine with me. My biggest takeaway, I guess, is more on Washington being left out of the top four. I'm surprised that I don't know who you take out of there, but I would have thought it's already setting up that it's going to be difficult for Washington if everyone's to run the table for Washington to get in. Obviously, Ohio State and Michigan both can't run the table, but it's putting the Pac-12 already behind the eight ball, which runs a little counterproductive to how we've thought that the Pac-12 has been treated this year and how they've played this year over the balance of the season. I mean, the Pac-12 has 6 teams in the top 25, and people have, I think, believe that the depth of the Pac-12 is probably deeper than any other conference this year. You know, we've been saying down year for the SEC, yet Georgia, if we're looking at just this season, they're already number 2. To me, like if I was doing a ranking, and I'm not, I would personally put Georgia number 1 because they're the defending champs and they still are dominating team. So that's my opinion. But I thought it was interesting that Washington, who we're going to get to in a little bit, previewing their game against USC this weekend, I thought it was interesting that they are being left out despite looking at the rankings. They have the best team of any team in the top 5. They beat number 6 Oregon. So I thought that was interesting.
No, 100%. And it makes me wonder. So like you mentioned, Ohio State and Michigan, neither of them is going to be able to run the table because they play in the final game of the season, obviously. And whoever loses that game, if Washington is still perfect at that point, does the committee elevate them over top the loser of the Michigan-Ohio State game? Or do they still leave Washington out in the cold, like in that scenario? Like, do you think that Washington would leapfrog them? Or especially with Ohio State starting out at number 1, like say Ohio State loses to Michigan, which I think, I mean, you know, early prognostication, that's what I think it's going to happen for the 3rd straight year is Ohio State's going to lose to Michigan. Like, with them starting out at number 1, is that loss to the number 2 team or the number 3 team in these rankings? Is that enough to drop them below Washington, an undefeated Washington team?
They're giving themselves the chance if this follows like if the sequencing of events it's now the first step is done, you know, in terms of getting that scenario out there. To be honest, a lot of these things tend to work themselves out over the next month where there ends up being only like 4 undefeated teams, or there ends up being 3 undefeated teams, and then the one loss team just kind of like figures like it all. You rarely see like serious up in arms debates when we come down to it. Like last year, I don't know about you, Cody, but I know like many made the case that Alabama should have gone in over TCU because Alabama would beat TCU on a neutral field, which like I was personally of the belief that TCU absolutely deserved to get in. I didn't think it was really that close. And when we got there, it didn't appear to be. I know it tends to kind of work itself out. Even if like people get up in arms about a certain result or that a team gets left out, there's rarely like an egregious kind of thing that happens with these things. They tend, even though we have 5 unbeatens right now, and we'll have at least, 4 when we get there, there's usually only like 3, maybe 2 when we get there, and it tends to be the top 4 tends to rise to the top. So we're at number 1, the first ranking, I should say. If you were making a ranking right now, your top 4, following whatever criteria you want, not projecting out the rest of the season, but I guess your top 4 as of this moment, what would it be?
So I actually have the same top 4, just in moving Ohio State down. I'm in line with the AP top 25. I think that's what it should be. That's Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Ohio State 3, Florida State 4. I think when you balance out eye test and resume, those are the 4 teams that have separated themselves from the other ones, because even if Washington has the best singular win, they haven't been consistently dominant, particularly of late, with getting scared against in the past couple of weeks. And so I think that hinders them enough to comfortably leave them at 5 and then have that top 4.
Yeah, I'd agree. I wrote down Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Florida State 3, Ohio State 4. So not a serious gripe. It's more just the way that I think Florida State has played, even though that Clemson loss is getting worse by the week. I just think that I would put Florida State over Ohio State, but I can't really complain there. And then moving down the board, I think Washington and Oregon being 5 and 6 is pretty fair. Texas being 7 is fair, Alabama 8, and then Oklahoma 9. And then I think you kind of draw a line and we start to separate a little bit. So overall, not an egregious type of opening ranking. I do think before we move on to the picks part of this show, the College Football Chair Committee, I don't have the quote up, but he said that the Michigan sign stealing scandal will not figure into the college football playoff selections, which I kind of agree, right? I don't see a reason why it should. That's nothing but it's a totally independent organization investigating. Has nothing to do with what's going to happen in the playoffs. So I think this idea that Michigan will be banned from the college football playoff, that's completely nonsensical. And it doesn't appear that anything close to that will be happening when the final rankings are revealed.
Yeah, no, the 2 quotes that he said that, pretty much tell you everything you need to know is he called it, quote, an NCAA problem, which is a hilarious thing because there are already people who are talking about the college football playoff basically taking over for the NCAA eventually as a governing body of the sport. But then on top of that, he also said something to the effect of the college football playoffs sole goal is to get the 4 best teams in there, and Michigan's one of the 4 best teams. And so if that's their goal, then they're not gonna let these extracurriculars affect that.
I agree. And we will see where that saga of Michigan sign stealing goes in the coming weeks. Okay, good stuff there. On the college football playoff rankings, if I had to guess, that's where that opening segment is likely going to be going for the next month or so as we head toward the final release of the show after conference championship week. Okay, let's get to best bets. We had a pretty solid week last week. I went 4-2. You went 3-3. I got the head-to-head win over you. Shout out to Oregon, making that pretty routine against Utah on the road. So I'm still 5 under on the year, 29-34-1. Cody, you are 9 under on the year, 27-36-1. So both of us not doing so hot, but I'm a little bit better.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I'll take it. We got 6 picks we want to get to. We have 2 marquee games we're going to hit on. Then we're going to move to the Pac-12. We also have our favorite total because we both won on those last week, so we're going to keep that rolling. We also, of course, have our upset picks and Sickos picks. So a lot to get to. Let's start with what is working for us. Favorite total bet. Cody, going to Old Faithful here. What's your favorite total bet on the board?
Absolutely. The oldest and most faithful, the Service Academy under. So it's Army, Air Force under 31.5. Really wish I could have gotten this earlier in the week because it's dropped, I think, 4 points from where it opened. I think it opened at 35.5, if I'm not mistaken. Regardless, it's dropped a lot. But after the Air Force Navy game earlier this season went under, Service Academy unders, when these 2 service academies play, is now 44, 10, and 1 since 2005. That's over an 80% clip that this is hitting. And we talked about, for that game, why that's the case. Pace of play, limited possessions, because we're talking about 2 option teams. And you look at this Army team, and their defense is bad. And that is the one thing that I would would worry me, but Navy's defense was also bad. And when you have these triple option teams, they're more prepared to face a triple option offense than any other team in the country that's on their schedule. And so Army's defense, despite putting up poor numbers overall this season, is still going to have a leg up on Air Force that most other opponents do not have. And when you factor in all of these things and the fact that it's being played in Colorado Springs, I'm not far from Colorado Springs down here in Santa Fe. It's supposed to be a little bit warmer this weekend, but it's been getting chilly. It's been getting a little cold. And I think we're just going to be in for another Service Academy rock fight.
This one was a little too low for me to pull the trigger on. I bet it with you during Army, Navy, or Air Force, Navy, and that was never in doubt.
No.
I also had Navy with the points and ended up on a push there because went for 2 down.
Yep.
Down 11, I think, or I don't know. Down 11, they went for 2 to make it a 9-point game because that makes sense. There's 30 seconds.
For sure.
This one just a little too low for me, and mainly it's because I think Army's defense it is the worst of the 3 service academies, and Air Force is the best offense of the 3. Also, Army has been we're starting to see the service academies filter out of their triple option tendencies slowly but surely. But Army has been the one to embrace it the most. Navy and Air Force are the 2 lowest pass rates in the country. Army is a little bit higher than that. I'll pull it up right now. But this number has kind of just dipped down to like a little too far. 31.5 really doesn't give a lot of margin for error. So I can join you here, Cody. I understand going with Old Faithful, but it's just a little too much for me to handle this year. Army is still third. Is the 3rd lowest. Air Force is the lowest, sub 10%. Navy's at 26%. Army is pushing 30%. So we're starting to get a little bit higher. Army's offense has struggled. They got their quarterback back last week. I can't fault you for playing it. I don't have the testicular fortitude to go with one at 31.5 between these 2.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I'm looking at is with Army is transitioning. They are kind of getting a little bit, like you said, from the triple option, DNA to some degree, but this offense still isn't good. And Air Force is arguably the best defense that they played this year. So I honestly don't see Army doing a lot in terms of putting points on the scoreboard in this game. And I think with the limited number of possessions, with Army's familiarity defensively with the triple option, I just think that, if Air Force wins 31-0, this still hits. And I think I think that's a very real possibility for this game, how I see it playing out.
It's definitely in play with the way Air Force is destroying teams. So I wouldn't put it by you. All right, mine. We're off the bye. Starting quarterback Jacob Zeno's back. Another UAB over. UAB FAU over 60. This is a no-brainer. FAU, I've spoken about him on this show, especially in recent weeks, with the offense being unlocked. Ran into some trouble against UTSA 2 weeks ago. Only scored 10 points, let up 36, lose 36-10, obviously, to UTSA in a big game. Few turnovers really set them back in that one. That being said, we saw him get off the schneid last week on a Friday night, destroy Charlotte, which has quietly been one of the better defenses in the group of 5 ranks. Scored 38 in that one. Again, we want to go back 3 weeks. They scored 56 against USF. This offense has been on the rise out of their bye week. New quarterback Daniel Richardson has helped. Going against UAB, extra prep for Alex Mortensen and Trent Dilfer. Jacob Zeno's out of concussion protocol. I think this UAB team is going to soar over. This team has been going over at will pretty much. 5 overs to 3 unders. They've gone over in 4 of 6 games as underdogs. Even with a third stringer 2 weeks ago against Memphis, scored 21. They only put up 20 points against UTSA, allowed 41. Prior to that, again, USF seems to be another team that we should be looking at over. They scored 56 there. This team plays in shootouts. I think there's no reason why we can't get at least 4 touchdowns and another one from either team in that one. Should be a really fun, exciting game. The game's a pick 'em. So FAU, UAB over 60. We're back on our Dilfer overs here.
Yeah, I mean, and you talk about the UTSA game where they only scored 20. I believe the over still hit. So it's one of those things where
did not hit. It stayed under because it got steamed all the way up to 66.5. UAB also should have probably covered in that game. They outgained UTSA as someone who had a UAB, and that was really annoying. But
I believe you had it on the show. I believe that was the Sickos Pick
that was annoying. Outgaining a team and losing by 21 as like a touchdown underdog. I still like both offenses to hum here, especially with the extra prep time for the Blazers. So over 60 is my play.
Yeah, I mean, with the track record of UAB says they're liable to go over, and like you said, and like I mean, going back to that UTSA point, like yes, it got juiced up to 66, but if it's at 60 in the low 60s, high 50s, UAB's been pretty solid to hit that just about every time they're on the field.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk some of the bigger games on the board. Alabama-LSU, SEC West. Wouldn't say it's for the division, but pretty much. We're getting to a point this late in the season. This gives a serious leg up. Ole Miss still in the mix, but this one is a biggie for sure. Alabama's laying 3, total of 59.5. Both teams had a bye prior to this one. It appears that LSU's defense is on the rise after a really poor start. We'll see if that's matchup dependent, given that they've played some lackluster offenses of late. Jaden Daniels has been fantastic, putting up Heisman-like numbers. This win would really thrust his name into serious consideration. Meanwhile, on the other side, Alabama lose the Texas game. All they've done is respond against tough competition. Beat Ole Miss at home. Beat A&M on the road. Beat Tennessee despite a slow start at home. Extra prep time here against a potentially poor defense. Cody, how do you figure?
I'm going with the LSU side on this. The extra prep time for Nick Saban and this Alabama staff does scare me because that's not something I ever want to really go against. But when I've been looking at this game from afar coming into it, the one thing I keep coming back to is, yes, Alabama's defense has played quality offenses, and they've stifled some of them. Like in the second half against Ole Miss in that game, they just completely negated anything Lane Kiffin wanted to do. It was a bloodbath when Alabama was on the defensive side of the ball. But they haven't played this offense for LSU. And there's 2 factors that I think really play in LSU's favor offensively. And one is the offensive line. LSU might have the best offensive line in the country. I don't think that's that outlandish to say. And so I think at minimum, they can negate the force that the Alabama front 7 tends to put on opposing offenses. But then on top of that, they also have the same high-end skill position talent with Malik Neighbors and company that I don't think it's as good top to bottom as what Texas has, but they have that type of playmaking potential to where you can get after the secondary. This secondary has proven for Alabama that they're not perfect. They have a lot of high-end talent. They're a very veteran group, and they have a lot of experience, but they can be had when you're matched up against elite playmakers like Malik Neighbors and with Jaden Daniels throwing the ball. And we've talked about this Alabama offense with Jalen Milroe all season, and I think recently we've been complimentary because he's found his niche as basically like an explosive play merchant. Like he wants to hit the home run, and if he strikes out a couple times, that's okay. Against this LSU team, against this LSU offense, which I don't think Alabama is going to have great success slowing down, I don't know if Jalen Milroe can hit the singles and doubles, even against a poor LSU defense. He's played poor defenses and still struggled to hit the singles and doubles. And so I don't know if he's going to be able to have the sustained offense or enough explosive plays to keep up with this LSU offense in this game. So LSU +3.
We're going to go head-to-head again.
Let's go.
I like Bama -3. The more I dug into this game, the more I think that LSU's run of sound defense is really based around the kind of strength of schedule and the offenses that they faced. Anytime LSU has faced an offense that could put up any sort of points on the board, they have. Arkansas, which has fallen off a cliff, they scored 31 against them. Do I have to talk about the Florida State game where they scored 45? Ole Miss scored 55. Missouri scored 39. And honestly, that score got to double digits because LSU had a pick 6 in the final minute. Auburn only scored 18. I think we could consider Auburn as arguably the worst offense in the SEC at this point. They played Army, shut them out. So that probably makes, boast them up a little bit. I just think you're asking this defense to travel on the road to Tuscaloosa against I would say the best defense they're going to face that they have faced to date. So you have a defense that hasn't stopped anybody playing a pretty solid offense. So that's going against them. Then you have a really, really good offense playing the best defense that they've seen so far this year on the road. I feel like there's a lot of factors going against LSU, and I think this recent run-up is inflating their standing here to say that they're better than Alabama on a neutral field or pretty similar. I think Alabama's the more complete team here. mainly because of the defense. I'm not going to say anything bad about Jaden Daniels or anything like that. That being said, I had my concerns about Jalen Milroe. Producer Joanne clipped me being concerned about Jalen Milroe hitting deep shots against Texas A&M. I mean, Jalen Milroe has been absolutely superb this season, and I've turned my tune from kind of being anti-Alabama to being on Alabama. Jalen Milroe is 60% on throws of 20 or more yards with 17 big-time throws to 0 turnover-worthy plays, according to Pro Football Focus. LSU is 119th in explosive pass defense.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're a little concerned if Jalen Milroe can hit the singles and doubles, but this game might just be full of home runs, and I trust Alabama's defense to keep the ball inside the park instead of LSU, who is playing in what do they call the Atlanta Braves stadium? There's like a wind tunnel or something that's going to send the balls flying out.
Or Coors Field, you know.
Yeah, I just think Alabama to me is a better team. And if you want to play like the comparing power ratings and stuff like that, Alabama against Ole Miss, spread closed at around a touchdown. Alabama favored by 6.5. LSU was a 3-point road favorite against Ole Miss, and they lost that game. So you probably were incorrect there. So LSU at home, again, probably inside of a touchdown or something. But again, Alabama outperformed expectations their game against Ole Miss. LSU did not. We're like assuming a common opponent. To me, I just think Alabama's the better team. I trust them more specifically, and I trust them at home. Few other things that I think are going to help my case. Special teams. This game might be back and forth in its last team with the ball.
Yeah.
LSU, 87th in special teams grade, according to Pro Football Focus. Alabama, 5th in the entire country. Alabama does not shoot themselves in the foot when the third unit gets on the field. Another one, Bama is 7th in tackling. LSU is right around the national average in the 50s. So I think Bama, they could limit these explosive plays. LSU has shown a propensity to arm tackle a little bit. So I think I like Alabama in this one. I think that they're going to be the more consistent unit, and I think that they cover the 3.
So
I think the chance this might be Alabama's best game of the year.
So my pushback on this would be, I'm not even going to argue the fact that Alabama might be the better team this year. Like top to bottom, look at the roster. However, I would also argue that Alabama might have been the better team last year. And this LSU offense with Brian Kelly and Jaden Daniels had every answer for them. And it was a wild game, but LSU came out on top. And I think that this LSU offense, particularly with Jaden Daniels and his mobility, is uniquely suited to attack this Alabama defense. And I mean, I'm going to be, a little peek behind the curtain for everybody. My initial bet here was going to be LSU team total over 28.5. Love that bet. I think that this game is going to soar over. I think we're looking at a high scoring affair. Like you said, shootout, last possession wins. But I saw you go Alabama -3. And I just think that LSU has the ability to play their best game and keep this within a field goal or win the game outright.
And you want to pick up a game on me in the standings.
Well, yes, of course.
I just think there's a lot of edges for Alabama to win a game that is going to come down to the wire. I trust their team. I trust their coach a lot more. And I'm going to be honest, Jalen Milroe has kind of proven to me that he can be trusted to win these tight games. I think the Texas game got a little sideways there, but LSU's defense isn't what Texas is. I don't know if LSU's going to be able to get home like Texas was able to. So I don't know if that's the comparable game. I think the Ole Miss game is where we look at, we could draw some parallels. I think Ole Miss, we watched Ole Miss and LSU playing a crazy game. I think that's where we're looking for some parallels. And I mean, listen, again, Alabama, they were favored by touchdown against Ole Miss. They were favored by a touchdown against Texas, favored by close to 10 against Tennessee, favored on the road against A&M. Now, all of a sudden, we're just kind of bolstering up LSU's resume. I don't really see where that's coming from. The defense still hasn't proven to me that it's made improvements. I think we're kind of just assuming that they've made improvements over the year and stuff because we haven't heard that they played so bad, but they played Auburn and Army.
Yeah.
Every decent offense has been able to put up points.
No, and I'm not arguing that fact. At the same time, you talk about you don't know if LSU is going to be able to get home. Pro Football Focus has LSU's pass rush this year graded as the 20th best in the country, and we know this Alabama offensive line has struggled. And Milroe's legs and mobility do negate that somewhat, but I think you have a very similar type of talent to what Texas has up front in terms of being able to get after Milroe, being able to pressure him, being able to potentially limit the opportunities for him to get those explosive plays. Maybe the route hasn't developed downfield by the time he's getting pressure in his face and he's got to get the ball out. And so that's another factor where I'm looking at, I'm not looking at this game for LSU's defense to win this game for them. I'm looking at it from a perspective of, can Alabama's offense come up with enough plays to keep up with LSU's offense? Because I have enough faith in LSU's offense, even if they haven't played a defense as good as Alabama's, which I'm still dubious of how good this Alabama defense is by Alabama standards, to be clear. On a national standard, still very good, but by Alabama standards. And I just think that I'm on the LSU side because I don't have faith in Jalen Milroe in this offense against this pass rush, with how that offensive line has struggled, with their inability to run the ball consistently against anyone, not just the best defenses that they played. I'm worried that they won't be able to keep up with LSU.
We'll see.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a fun one. I'm excited.
I'll make it 2 weeks in a row, picking up a game on you. All right, let's move. Pac-12 has a handful of massive games. We're not going to talk about all of them. We're only going to talk about two, but Washington, a ton of scares in recent weeks. Obviously, the escape against Oregon. They need a pick six against Arizona State and an inexplicable drop against Stanford to pull away there. Yeah. They go to USC to play. UCLA is on the road to play Arizona. Oregon State off their losses in Boulder to play Colorado. Oregon, who is, for my money, the third best team in the country. They're hosting Cal, who lost an absolute buck wild game. That really hurt me as someone who had Cal win total over. Could have used that win. That hurt. And I think that's all the Pac. Oh, and Utah hosts Arizona State. Not as impactful, but just another Pac-12 game. So a lot of games to talk about. Cody, where are you going this week? This is just a Pac-12 only segment, so we could flesh out some ideas here.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to that Oregon-Cal game you mentioned, and I'm targeting Oregon in the first half, minus 13.5. Oregon has the USC game next week, and that's in Eugene. And I don't think that they care. I mean, I don't think this is a big stretch. I don't think they care about the Cal game quite as much as they do the USC game. I think that's a much bigger game in the Pac-12 race. I think it's a much bigger game nationally, much bigger national spotlight. And Oregon is obviously the vastly superior team in terms of the metrics. Their defense is going to be able to really cause Cal problems up front. And I think Bo Nix, Bucky Irving, and this Oregon offense should be able to have their way. But I don't really trust them. I don't trust Dan Lanning to do it for 4 quarters and necessarily, keep the pedal to the floor for 4 quarters and cover a 24, 25-point spread, depending on where you're looking. But I do think that they get out to a big early lead and then kind of coast to the second half just to get into the USC game healthy, because that is such a substantially bigger game. So I think, just asking Oregon to go up into the half by 2 touchdowns, I think that they're more than capable, and I think they do it in this game.
I completely agree. I think Cal might get just absolutely walked here.
Yeah. I mean, and Cal's coming off the emotional loss last week.
And Cal's defense is bad, especially through the air. So I think Oregon might really tee off. I can't hate this one. I fought through my shot collar that says never to bet USC, but I did it here. I took the points with USC. It's merely a play on me trusting neither team, so I'll take the team that has a plus sign next to it. I think this matchup sets up pretty nicely for USC. I don't think Washington is all the way healthy. And if there's one thing USC can do, it's get pressure. They can get in the backfield. They can make some plays. And Michael Penix, not necessarily the best guy at throwing under duress, not necessarily making plays on the run. So I think USC can maybe get a few negative plays and get off the field. I just think Caleb Williams, I'm afraid this team has quit, and maybe this blows up in my face, but if Caleb Williams wants to, he can do whatever he wants against this Washington defense that let up 30-plus against Stanford last week. Oregon moved the ball at will against them. I just think USC has the skill position players to really give Washington some fits, a team that's bottom half of the country in terms of EPA per play and success rate. And what I find most interesting is talk badly about USC. They give up a lot of chunk plays on defense. Success rate, though, down to down, they actually grade out better than Washington. It's flipped, where Washington does a good job of limiting explosives, but really bad at like down to down getting off the field. They are outside the top 80 in terms of success rate. USC's right around the national average in terms of success rate. So that means when teams need to move the ball and stay on schedule, so that's picking up 4 yards on first down, getting to 3rd and 3, and then getting a first down on 3rd down. To me, that means that USC is going to be able to have long sustaining drives, keep that offense off the field, and put enough scores. I mean, listen, the total 76. I think both teams are going to get whatever they want. It's just a matter of, I'm getting 3 points in a game that I truly think is a pick-em. I truly think that there's very little separating these teams on the road. Washington's current form, their injuries are starting to pile up. I think if USC wants this game, it's there for them. So I'll take the 3 with the home dog. This is like a pretty big, I know it looks ugly given what we've seen from USC, but like this is a pretty swift change in expectation for the Trojans here to get a full 3. So I think they could cover here. And I think, honestly, I think they're going to win this game if they're up for it. I know this could sound stupid and they just quit and they just like kind of drag their feet through the game. But I think USC, if they come correct, they will win this game.
No, and I think that's 100% right. Like, it is risky for the quit factor. But if you assume that USC has not quit, which, granted, as we've been talking about, is not a guaranteed assumption. But if you assume that, then this is a great number to get them at in this matchup, because this isn't the same Washington team that we saw beat Oregon at Husky Stadium. Their offensive line is banged up. They've had guys in and out of the lineup for the past couple games. Michael Penix is also banged up. Like, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was like a minor rib injury he suffered in that Oregon game. And you watch him throw over these past 2 games, and it's not been pretty. And when, to your point, when he's been under pressure, he's been like rushing throws so he doesn't take as big a hit so he can protect himself. So I think this is a good number. I mean, it's going to be a shootout, but with USC getting the 3, I think that's probably the right side. I would not touch a side in this game just because I don't know about USC's quit factor. Like, there's a legitimate chance this team ends up at 7-5, like they lose the remainder of their games, but they have enough talent to win this game outright, like you said. And if they show up, I think that's getting the 3 points. If you think they have the talent to win the game outright and you're getting 3 points, I think that's a nice bet.
Yeah. I think if Caleb Williams will still be the best player on the field and he's the underdog. And again, this is a team that was just 2.5 on the road at Notre Dame, a team that has a stout defense, that plays physical bully ball, that could really play a style of football that USC doesn't like.
Yeah.
Washington's going to play a style of football that USC really likes.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be a lot of big plays, a lot of pushing the ball down the field. That's why I think this matchup sets up better for USC, who, I mean, again, this is a pretty stark flip. You're now getting them as a home dog of 3. So I listen, home dog, woof, woof. Give me the Trojans +3. All right. Another big time matchup, Georgia, Missouri. Missouri coming in, looking like the best team we're going to see Georgia face this regular season. Missouri's offense is vastly improved under first-year offensive coordinator Kirby Moore. They have Luther League Burden at wide receiver, Brady Cook, who I believe I went on a show before the season said Brady Cook is going to be selling cars or doing like insurance sales in a few years.
That might have been this show. I'm pretty sure.
So I whiffed on Missouri, but I've been quick to walk it back because I have been super impressed with this offense as the year has progressed. For my money, this will be the best team Georgia's faced in the regular season. That being said, Georgia looked like they weren't messing around at the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, hanging 40+ against Florida, making it look easy without Brock Bowers. Cody, how do you figure this matchup? We got Georgia laying 15.5, total of 54.5.
Yeah, so I'm going once again to the first half. I'm literally just running back the play I made with Florida last week. Georgia first half -7.5. I think we see Missouri is a better team than Florida. Do not get me wrong. The offense, I think, is substantially better, and they have a playmaker like Luther Burden, who I think is a difference maker that Florida just doesn't necessarily have on their roster. But at the same time, I think you're looking at a Georgia team that is going to be able to have their way offensively too. Missouri ranks 73rd in EPA per dropback defensively this season. And we saw what we've been looking for all season, when Carson Beck gets the reins to this offense and he's allowed to just air it out to Lad McConkey, to Ra Thomas, to Dominic Lovett, to Oscar Delp, who made you forget about Brock Bowers there for a second when he came into the game, like another top 50 recruit at tight end. And that he just aired it out. And that was the best game I've seen Carson Beck play, mostly because they put the game in his hands and he just took it and ran with it. And I don't think Missouri has any resistance to that. On the flip side of that, Missouri's offense is better than we thought, but they're not a perfect offense. We've seen them, struggle to build consistent drives. They've hit at times. Like, you look at the end of that LSU game when they, had some costly turnovers. Like, there's still some jag in Brady Cook that I don't think is going to go away. And I think this Georgia defense showed in the first half last week against Florida that it's going to let you get your opening script off in like the first drive of the game. But after that, they have the playmakers and they have the adjustments to just completely throw all of that by the wayside and put you back on your heels. I think that's what they do to Missouri in this. I think they get up by more than two scores in the first half and then just kind of coast to victory. That's just where I see this game heading.
Yeah, I can't fault you. I kind of think Missouri could keep this competitive just because it's maybe a shock to the system that Georgia has to face like a legitimate offense. I played the over. I think there's going to be points here. And I think we're looking at this game the same way we looked at the Florida game, where I took the over in that game and it hit with relative ease. I think Missouri could put some points on the board. I think, like, for Georgia to win, they're going to need to get into the 30s comfortably, because I think the same concerns I have for Georgia's defense is even more paramount in this Missouri game. Georgia's defense is still outside the top 100 in red zone touchdown percentage. Georgia's defense is still not getting home. They're still bottom half of the country in terms of sacks. So maybe Missouri goes in and turtles and they get all nervous and stuff, but I respect this offense enough to think that they're going to be able to put points on the board. I said it last week. Teams have been able to score on Georgia. Georgia's still really good. I'm not saying that the defense is bad or anything, but teams are able to put in points, even if it's late in the game. Florida got to 23 last week? 20?
20, yeah. 43-20.
20 last week. So I think Missouri is going to be able to put some points on the board. Even if Florida could get 20, I think Missouri could definitely pencil them in for like 24-27. So I still think Georgia, this Missouri defense, it's kind of like a script from last year. Their defense was so good last year. This year, it's kind of a weak point of the team. And I think with this newfound energy from the Georgia passing game, finally letting Carson Beck cook, finally hitting downfield shots, I think Georgia's going to push into the mid-30s, into the high 30s. I think Missouri, though, isn't going to be that far behind them. I like the over as my favorite play in this one. I'll go Georgia 38, Missouri 27. I think this game is going to be there's going to be fireworks. I think League Burden going to look like he belongs in the league. That's why it's his name.
So I don't actually disagree with that, because I think that's why I'm taking the first half, is I think Missouri's offense is capable enough for the backdoor cover. I don't want to touch that 15 number. That scares the absolute hell out of me. But I think that the College Football Playoff Selection Committee might have done Missouri the worst disservice possible in this game by ranking Georgia number 2, because now Kirby Smart has something to motivate Georgia with. Mm-hmm. And he told last year's team that someone told them they were a 7-5 team, which I don't know where that take came from. And they believed it and bought in and played with their hair on fire. And this team, I think one of the big underlying narrative issues has been, what's their motivation? Is there a sense of complacency? Because I mean, they're ranked number 1, even after some close games, some close wins, they were still ranked number 1. Everyone seems to be believing in them. Well, now they have someone who doesn't believe in them. And I think they come out with their hair on fire in this one. And I think the reason I'm going with the first half is I think they come out on fire playing like that and build a lead. And then Missouri's able to keep it respectable for the rest of the game because of the talent on their offense, because of the talent of Luther Burden, because of Brady Cook, taking the leap forward from what we saw last year. So I just think that full game, I do think Missouri keeps it respectable. I don't think it's a blowout by any means, but I think Georgia just comes out and jumps on them a little bit.
It's possible. I just think this is the best offense Georgia's going to see all season. Missouri's top 20 in EPA per play. They're averaging nearly 3 points per drive. I just think this isn't a Georgia team that I think is going to be a Georgia defense that's going to suffocate like they did to Tennessee last year at home or something like that. So I think I think Missouri can hang around. I think that this game could go over the total. It's my favorite look in this one. I won't go for the outright upset, but I think Missouri could hang around in this one, and I'd say losing like that 10 to 14 range, or maybe instead of like that 17 to 20 range, like the spread might indicate. So Well, before we move on, after Florida drives down the field and scores on the first drive, how nervous were you about your first half bet?
Honestly, I wasn't.
Oh,
I wasn't nervous at all because I've trained myself mentally to not overreact to first drives because scripts can be great and it's what happens after the script that matters. And so until I saw the second drive, I wasn't going to start to panic. Had Florida moved the ball well enough in that second drive of the game, I would have been a little panicked. But after I watched the second drive, I was like, oh, we're so good.
All right, let's move on. Let's do our two staples that we always book on the show with upset picks. Mm-hmm. Cody, where are you looking? I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah, so I'm going to Bedlam, and I've got Oklahoma State +6, +195 on the money line. I am severely worried about Oklahoma after what I saw against Kansas last week for two reasons. One, Kansas has been a defense that has been generous, is what I'll say, all season long. They haven't been able to stop anyone. And yes, they allowed 33 points to Oklahoma in a weird game that was delayed for over an hour by rain, but they allowed 33 points. But Dillon Gabriel looked shockingly mortal in that game, like in terms of his ability to throw the ball. He did not and there were injuries in the wide receiver core, and I understand that, but he could not find a rhythm throwing the ball, which is not typically what you want to see coming into a rivalry game. Perhaps it was a look ahead spot. Perhaps that was part of it. But then the other part that worries me about Oklahoma is something that I didn't foresee coming after what we saw in the Texas game. But the Oklahoma defensive front kind of got, I don't know if it was bullied, but fooled, definitely. Kansas ran the ball pretty much at will in them. It didn't matter who it was either. If it was Jason Bean, Highshaw, Neal, they all ran the ball really effectively against Oklahoma last week. And now you're coming in this game against Oklahoma State, who has found their identity offensively with Ollie Gordon as their workhorse. It's 2 straight games over 250 yards against worse talent than Oklahoma has on the defensive front, no doubt. But I think Oklahoma State is able to put together sustained drives to keep Dillon Gabriel and this offense off the field, get them out of rhythm offensively, which I think is what Kansas was able to do with their ability to run the ball. I think it disrupts the flow of this fast-paced Oklahoma offense, of their ability to control the game. And I think I'm getting almost a touchdown. Oklahoma State's trending up right now. Like, they're a team that we talked about being on the upswing, and their defense is marginally better than Kansas, but we saw that Kansas had a game plan to shut him down. Mike Gundy knows Oklahoma, better than anyone. This is the last time Bedlam's going to be played for the foreseeable future. We've seen how much that means to Mike Gundy. I think he's going to pull out all the stops, and so I just love this spot for Oklahoma State.
I love it. I took the points of Oklahoma State already. I think that they could win this one for sure. I don't see much difference. I mean, I've been a pretty anti-Oklahoma guy all year now. You got to go on the road. Yeah, I think Oklahoma's inability to establish the run is going to lead to some issues. And they had some turnovers last week, some untimely ones. Kansas kind of gave the ball back a few times. But this is a team that's still is third in the country in turnover margin. So I think, a few untimely turnovers could maybe set this team back. I think the Pokes are super live in this one in Bedlam, especially, again, Oklahoma. I don't want to say like their dreams are crushed, but like it's going to be really tough for them to get into the college football playoff now, just given what their resume is going to look like when it's all said and done. Like 2 wins over Texas, I don't know if that really gets you home if you have 1 loss. So
and they're already behind Texas, who they have. Like, you were going through the top 10, and every head-to-head was honored except Texas, Oklahoma, and that was one of my big takeaways from that top 10 was like, oh, they like. It's like I said, speaking out of both sides of their mouth, the selection committee with the top 4, they're kind of doing that with the eye test resume thing with Oklahoma and Texas as well. Because Texas clearly eye test wise is, the better team, but Oklahoma won the head to head.
Exactly. So I'm a little concerned for Oklahoma, as you said, that heading down the home stretch. So I think Oklahoma State definitely getting this many points. I definitely agree. Mine, not as exciting. I usually come in with the more gutsy ones. You got me covered this time. I'm going to go Friday night. I'm going to take BC +2.5. I think that they win the game outright. I think Boston College should be favored in this game. Spoken about my boy Tommy Castellanos before a long drive deep to left field. Castellanos, he's been unbelievable this year. Has completely reignited this BC offense. They're going to go bowling As someone who had win total over 5.5, it was a dark opening week loss to Northern Illinois, but we stuck with it. We persevered, and we're at 5 wins, and I think we get to 6 on Friday night at the whatever they call the Carrier Dome now in upstate New York. I think BC, their offense is absolutely so much more explosive than Syracuse's. And I think with Castellanos running around, making chunk plays, this team is now top 10 in EPA per rush. Syracuse is trending in the wrong direction. I know, listen, BC isn't the teams I'm about to rattle off that Syracuse has played in conference play, but listen, like, what's BC now? Like a top half of the conference? I mean, they're 5-3 now. So, like, you got to be talking like a top half of the conference team, but Syracuse, since conference play has started, we are looking at, they lost to Clemson 31-14 at home, UNC 40-7 on the road, Florida State 41-3, and they came off their bye on a Thursday night and got absolutely dump trucked by Virginia Tech 38-10. So I think BC is a team on the rise. I don't really see the pop from Syracuse to really challenge this BC secondary. Give me the Eagles plus 2.5. Honestly, tell your bookie to keep them. You're taking the money line.
No, 100%. I mean, you're 100% right. This is a wrong team favorite situation. Like, what have we seen from Syracuse that makes you think, like, I understand the competition is not like you said, BC is a lower tier competition, but at the same time, throughout all those games, it's the results have started to look worse and worse and worse. Like losing to 28 to Virginia Tech, that's a bad look. Virginia Tech is a very mediocre team. And
they've been better, but yeah, I know what you're saying, but they've been better.
They have been, but I mean, like, they're not a top 3 team in the ACC. Maybe in the standings they are, but I'm talking in terms of quality.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're playing better, but like to get smoked like that, that's embarrassing.
Yeah, and like one of the things that is indicative of, and that we've heard, if you've listened or read anything from Dino Babers, this team is injured basically at every level. Like they have a ton of injuries, and Syracuse does not have the depth because of the transfer portal. Like if you're a backup on Syracuse, you're playing at a G5 team now starting. And like that's kind of the position they're in with their roster. So like they're shorthanded. They've been playing bad. There's a little bit of quit factor going on with this team. And Boston College is, like you've said, is trending in the other direction. They're playing hard for Jeff Hafley right now.
They want to make a bowl. They're one win away from a bowl.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you want to know where it all turned around? That red bandana game against Florida State. They're in that game. They nearly drive down the field and score and beat Florida State at home in that like windy, rainy game in September. That turned around the entire season. Complete impetus for change. I think we might have 2 winners here with BC and Oklahoma State.
I like them.
Sickos pick. I lost mine, New Mexico. Oh, and you had lost mine as well. That also lost. Okay, where are you going?
I'm going another team total for a Sickos game. I'm going the Rice team total under 18.5 against SMU. And this really comes down to 2 things. One, SMU's defense. We think about SMU from Sonny Dykes and with Rhett Lashley coming over as this kind of offensive juggernaut. Their offense has been solid when Preston Stone's been healthy. But this defense for the Mustangs has quietly been one of the better ones in the country. They rank 6th overall in EPA per play defensively this season. And then you look at this Rice team. They have good offensive numbers, but when you look at their schedule, you start to realize why they have good offensive numbers. I would argue that maybe the best defense that they played since the loss to Texas in week 1 is Tulane, and Tulane's defense has taken a big step back. They have not played a good defense at all this season. And so I think with the way this SMU defense is playing, I think they're able to get after JT Daniels, able to disrupt this passing game, which is how Rice moves the football. And 18.5, you're basically asking for three touchdowns against this SMU defense. I don't think they have it in them. We saw Oklahoma's offense only put up 28 on SMU's defense. What's me to think that that Rice's offense is going to be able to put up 18 or 21 points, like one fewer touchdown than Oklahoma did? I've seen nothing from Rice against a good defense that indicates that to me. I think SMU is able to keep them under this total.
Yeah, I bet Rice. I don't know if I shared on the show, but I bet Rice last week against Tulane because I was skeptical of Tulane's secondary holding down Rice's pass first offense. And then when, I was going through the opening lines last week, or this week, I should say, on Sunday, I saw Rice was like a similar number, double digits. And like my initial, my siren went off in my head, like, okay, we like Rice again. And then when I dove into it again, SMU has a far better secondary than Tulane's. I think
Mhm.
SMU might be the best team in the AAC. SMU 17th in EPA per pass. And again, this is a Rice team that passes at a top 10 rate in the country. So
Mhm.
if you could shut down their pass, they're really not going to be able to do much. Rice was able to not really threaten for a win, but they were able to hang around with Tulane and lose by 2. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that against SMU, a team that's really good against the pass. So I definitely agree with what you're thinking here. I think SMU can maybe shut this one down. I think what busts this up is that SMU plays fast and like there's a few
Mhm.
extra possessions for Rice and maybe they get like a garbage time score. But I agree with you. I think the SMU defense should be able to shut down what Rice wants to do.
I will also say this is a plus money bet at DraftKings. I believe it was like plus 150. So like we're getting plus value on a total that I think is very reasonable given the quality of this SMU defense.
Yeah, I can't fault this play. Mine, random game, random non-conference game. I'm going to take Jacksonville State plus 15.5 against South Carolina. Jacksonville State, they've been good to me all year. They have cashed their win total. They've fully exceeded 4.5. They're 7-2 on the year. And South Carolina, where's the motivation for South Carolina to beat up on a Jacksonville State team? The one concern here is that Spencer Rattler could take the top off this Jacksonville State secondary that is really leaky. They're outside the top 100 in explosive pass rate. They also get home a lot. They're very aggressive. They blitz at one of the highest rates in the country. Rich Rodriguez has his team playing super fast in competitive football. This feels like too many points for a South Carolina team that's been battling injuries. They're not going to make a bowl this year. Their season's kind of circling the drain. I think that they're more interested in kind of saving up for one last push against an SEC opponent rather than beating up on a pretty high level Jacksonville. For a G5 rank, Jacksonville State has proven it to me to be like, what, top 10, top
Yeah.
15,
Oh, absolutely.
G5 team. So I think
Absolutely.
I think this number is baked in more that it's an SEC team playing a, Conference USA opponent, FCS import. Jacksonville State has proven that they are far above just that. This is a team that looks like a pretty stout one. And if I'm not mistaken, they have extra time to prepare for this one. So I'm sure Rich Rodriguez is going to have this team up and ready to go. This is probably the shoe rule because they can't qualify for the CUSA championship. So I'll take Jacksonville State to lose by 2 touchdowns or less.
No, 100%. I think when I actually looked at this game and then I saw the line, I was like, ooh, Jacksonville State side. This feels like a game that ends up something like 48-34 South Carolina, where it's like a 14-point win. Because I don't have any worries about South Carolina winning this game. I don't think Jacksonville State's live for an upset or anything like that. But with an offensive mind like Rich Rodriguez and with how quickly this team has adjusted to the FBS level from the FCS level, and on top of that, with how poor this South Carolina defense overall has played, particularly in the secondary, with how they can be taken advantage of on the back end, I just think Rich Rod is going to be able to dial up enough to put up a big number on the scoreboard. I think Spencer Rattler in the South Carolina offense put up a big number as well, but I do think that over 2 touchdowns is too much. Like I would probably would have put this line at 13.5, not 15.5.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at what South Carolina's put on paper this entire season from a defense perspective, they've played a very difficult schedule. I understand that, but 122nd in EPA per play on defense. I mean, they've been gashed by everyone. And like FCS Furman put up 21 on them. Jacksonville State's going to be able to move the ball in this one. And I think South Carolina is not going to be thrilled that they drew this FCS import, late in the season. They're 2-6 on the year, South Carolina. So,
yeah.
And you look at where they've been in recent weeks, got smoked by Tennessee, lose the heartbreaker to Florida off their bye week, got smoked by Missouri, lose by double digits against Texas A&M. I just where is the team getting the motivation to get up off the mat here? Like I said, 2-6. So one more loss, they're out on bowls. I think Jacksonville State could hang here. I won't go for the outright upset, but that would be pretty funny. Cody, you want to recap our picks?
Yeah, let's do it. You want me to recap yours too?
No.
Okay.
Yours. Sorry. Recap of our picks.
I was making sure. I apologize. So for favorite total, I have Army Air Force under 31.5. Just hold your nose and take it. Alabama-LSU, I've got LSU plus the 3. Georgia, Missouri, give me Georgia first half minus 7.5. For the Pac-12, give me Oregon first half minus 13.5. Upset pick, go to Bedlam and take the Pokes. Oklahoma State plus 6, plus 195 on the money line against Oklahoma. And then Sickos pick, give me Rice team total under 18.5 at plus money.
That is truly sick. All right. For me, I bet the FAU UAB over 60. I took Alabama -3 against LSU. Took the over 54.5 in Georgia, Missouri. USC +3 against Washington. Took BC +2.5 to upset Syracuse. You'd get that money line +115. And then I took Jacksonville State +15.5 against South Carolina in the battle of the Gamecocks. Winner gets to be the Gamecocks moving forward next year. So great show, Cody. Great show. If you missed our promotion earlier in the episode, our new partner, SuperDraft Daily Fantasy, if you sign up with the code FAN, FAN, you will be eligible for a first deposit match of up to $20, and you will receive a free pick in your first game. You check the podcast description below for more on that one. Again, use the code FAN to help out the podcast. Cody, until next week, best of luck on all your bets, and we'll see you. Enjoy week 10 of the college football season.
Best of luck to you everywhere but Tuscaloosa, my man.